Welcome to the Ebb and Glow podcast. I'm your host, Jenelle Tremblett, and I'm a firm believer that even when life doesn't go as planned, it is taking you exactly where you're meant to be. On this podcast, I'm here to help you finally release control of what you think you want and begin to just trust in the ebbs and flows of life. Each week, I will show you how to build that positive mindset, radiate with self-confidence, and cultivate an unshakable resilience. Let me prove to you that even when life ebbs, you will glow. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 97 of the Ebb and Glow podcast. I'm your host, Jenelle, and I'm excited for you to listen to my guest, Melissa Pyrch. This episode is all around resiliency, going after your goals, and it's a reminder to all of us that start practicing what you preach. So we've all been in high school, and whether you've had good or bad experiences, whether good or bad has impacted you in some way. I can only speak for my experience, and for me, the teachers that I had throughout high school truly impacted the rest of my life. And there's still things to this day that they have said back then that have stuck with me and have really changed the way I see the world and how I go through my everyday life. And those teachers, some of them listen to this podcast and they know who they are. I don't need to name names. And I just want to thank them for having such an everlasting impact on my life in the most beneficial way possible. I mean, the narrative of a lot of movies and shows is high school is an awful experience. I personally can't say that. I had a fantastic experience throughout high school. I mean, I still had hardships and classic teenager troubles, but overall, I had a really, really great experience. And a lot of that is thanks to the teachers that I had. So how that relates to today's episode. So my guest today, Melissa Pyrch, is a high school English teacher of 20 years and a recent published author. Everybody recalls that one teacher who made a difference, the coach who inspired you, the math teacher who challenged you, or the English teacher who actually listened. Melissa Pyrch is one of those teachers. She has spent over 2 decades in classrooms with teenagers, so she really gets teenagers. She understands the uncertainty, the fear, the sheer excitement when thinking about the future. High school was a very uncertain but exciting time, especially as you start leaving maybe your small town or leaving everything you know to embark on something different. The lessons that you learn in those situations, you take with them through your entire life, no matter what new challenge you encounter. So Melissa wrote a book titled Beyond the Bell, 12 Lessons for Navigating Your Life After High School. And in this book, she talks about all of the uncertainty and fear and resiliency and setting goals. And essentially, while she was teaching these high school students, she saw a real white space in that there was no real books for that age group of just about to enter adulthood. And I mean, think back, there's so much unknown at that time of your life and you feel like you need to have it all figured out, but you're really just getting started. And it's hard to give advice to that age group. So Melissa saw it as an opportunity to create a book herself. If you're a high school student or a teacher or a family member of someone in that age group, I highly recommend purchasing Melissa's book. I know after talking to Melissa, her book is something I would have loved to get as a gift at the age of 17, 18, or maybe as a gift going into university. There's so much wisdom and knowledge in this book that can only help someone going through this time of their life. In this episode with Melissa, we talk about how it took her 3 years to get published and how there's so much rejection in the publishing world when pitching your book. We talk about how to be resilient in those times, how the importance of setting goals and really achieving them. Melissa herself is a mom of 3 young boys, and as a teacher, she was kind of launching a second career. And she thought to herself, if I'm always preaching to my high school students and my kids to follow their dreams, and then I sit here and never go write this book, I'm pretty much being a hypocrite. And so she finally got the courage to go after her dreams and finally launched the book. And this book actually gets published and launched on September 6th. If you're listening to this episode before then, it is available for pre-order. So just check the show notes to get that book. I know you're going to love this episode with Melissa. If you do, share it with a friend, because if you're getting value, I know they will too. And as a reminder for everyone, if you are scared of going after something you really want, Now is the time to start being brave and go after it because your only time is now. So without further ado, enjoy this episode with Melissa, and I'll see you on the other side. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat this morning.
Of course. I have very fond memories of one of my, or I should say my only high school English teacher for my grade 12 year. And she actively listens to this podcast. So that makes me really excited to interview you because I've been graduated for 11 years now, and she is still a big part of my life. And I remember to the T some of the conversations I've had with her that really changed the direction of my life and really changed the outlook of how I view life. So it's amazing what a high school teacher, the effect that you can have on these students.
Yeah, I think English too is special because when you're talking about literature, you're really talking about life, and you have an opportunity to talk about human condition and emotion. And I think that's where oftentimes the connections happen in the classroom. So it never surprises me when people say, I loved my English teacher in high school, or, they're still connected, because I think it's a special space, the English classroom that I've always been blessed to be in. So that's great. And hello to your high school English teacher.
She's fantastic. And I talk regularly to her. I shouldn't say regularly, but every now and then we keep in contact. And I have such gratitude towards all of my high school teachers. I loved my high school experience. And I'm sure you are a big part of a lot of your students' high school experience as well.
I hope so. I mean, I think that's why we do the job. I hope most teachers go into this profession to really be there for the students and make connections, again, beyond the classroom space, and to really follow the journey of all students after and see how they turned out. I mean, that's the greatest reward for me, is to see kids grow and thrive and chase their dreams. And that's kind of where the excitement for writing this book came from too.
The question I always like to ask people before we jump into it, we're going to talk about a lot of topics about resiliency and going against the odds and changing careers. But what I always like to ask all of my guests is, what's going on this week, this month? Basically, how is life getting you down lately?
Yeah. So I think when you're a teacher and your schedule is so drastically changing from the chaos and the hustle and bustle of the school year, and then all of a sudden everything comes to a halt and wraps up, there's something great about that. And there's also, for me, always been something really hard about that, because I am a person that thrives in a schedule and in being productive and getting up and going every day. So I think for me, honestly, the summers have been a really tough time for me. And I struggle to find the balance in my life. I mean, this week has been really hard. I have 3 little boys, and my husband's a captain of a fire department, and he worked a 36-hour tour this weekend. I'm camp mommy, and it's hard and it's daunting, and it really it makes me kind of long for my classroom and long for that space where people are there every day and there's energy. So yeah, for me, I think a lot of teachers joke like summer's off, but for me, I'm like, oh gosh, summer's off, because the classroom always it fills my cup. So yeah, that's what's going on now. I'm excited to go back to work. I know that's, an unpopular opinion a lot of times, but that is the truth for sure for me.
And especially, yeah, given your husband's job, you probably feel like a single mom during those times, and especially with 3 boys. You said they're 10, 8, and 4.
Yeah, many times.
That is a busy household.
It's a busy household, and many times it's just the hustle and bustle of life that I think most people do struggle with at different times. And it's really important to acknowledge that and to figure out what strategies can I use to pick myself up and continue on with the positive energy, because we continue on sometimes, but maybe not with the energy that we need to bring to the table and to really enjoy what's in front of us.
And I'm sure, given your career and your profession, the summers, your job is mom during the summers. So I'm sure you are the last person that's thought about.
100%.
And everyone gets put first in the summer.
Yeah. And I think too that, because I am working so hard at this kind of second career as an author, which is a dream of mine, there's a lot of balls in the air. And you're right. I think it's easy to come last. It's easy to put yourself last. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on now. And it's none of this is as glamorous as I think people people think, right? Because it's work. It's work. It's every day. It's an everyday hustle of figuring it out.
There's not many parts of hard work that's glamorous.
Right.
The glamour part is the reward at the end, the published book at the end, the great reviews, the money flowing in for the rest of your life. That's glamorous. But writing it and even just like making the decision to put yourself out there and just start,
Yeah.
that's not easy.
No, none of it is. I mean, and I think you really have to be clear about why you're doing something and what you're doing it for, because it's really easy to quit.
There's a reason why not every single person in the world has a book written.
Right.
It's very
100%.
hard.
100%. And I've said it so many times that for me, it would be, no, I wouldn't say easy, but it would be okay if I had a career as a teacher and gave 100% to my students and was a great mom and did all the things. But what was on my heart was writing this book. And I knew it was a harder road. I knew it was going to be work. And I kind of just settled in to commit to that and took it as it came. And I think that when you're going for your biggest dreams or when you're reaching for any goal, it really has to be in your heart and your passion, because the other stuff, the reward, the accolades for things may or may not come. So you have to be excited just to be doing it. And I think if you do it with the passion and the right intentions, and in my case, it was really to serve teenagers and support them during a time that I've come to learn is really tumultuous. I think the other stuff just comes naturally. I think the universe just presents it to you. It presents the right people, the right opportunities. But you just have to commit to it, because like I said, it's really easy to quit. It's really easy to get down. And it's work to kind of quell that negative talk and those feelings of defeat, because that will come too. It just is part of going for it.
Yeah, you're telling me. The question I have for you is, you made an interesting point of saying it's fine if I was just a teacher for the rest of my life until retirement and a fantastic mom. But there was a voice inside of your head and probably in your heart that said, this isn't enough for me. But how long was that voice there before you actually jumped at the opportunity?
You know what? It's funny. I've always been someone who loved to write my whole life. And so when I was a little kid, I always found joy in writing. And in different times of my life, I've kind of gone back to that craft, gone back to that excitement of just me in the page. But I think it was just after my third son was born, and I really felt like, wow, I have this house of my dreams. I always wanted to be a mom. I always wanted to get married. I felt like my career was in a great place. And I still had that need to put something out to the world and do something and serve in some other way. And I think that when it's the right time, your dream kind of meets you in the right place. I wrote lots of poetry. I wrote almost an entire young adult fiction book that never felt like the right project for me. And I used to pick up the manuscript and kind of force it. And it just was never right, but you just have to keep listening to what feels right and what the voices inside of you tell you. And it's crazy how writing this self-help book for teenagers really happened. I don't think if you would have told me 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that this was the book I was going to write and the content I was going to put out into the world and the vulnerability that went into this book, I would have told you are out of your mind. So, to answer your question, it kind of, yes, it's something that pulls at you, and it just pulls at you at the right time. And when you lean into it, you will find the right way to accomplish whatever it is that you're supposed to do in this world.
I love what you said about don't do it for the money, because if you start doing things for the money is never going to come, ever.
No, and I think listen, I think especially when, in my case, I serve teenagers, they see right through you. Kids see right through you, and they know if you're authentic. I've always felt that way, even in my classroom. Like over the last 2 decades, they knew which teachers were there because they were stuck in the career. They knew what teachers couldn't wait to get home. Kids would comment, and I'd listen, and I'd think, God, I wonder how they're reading me. I think they're just smart. And I kind of learned through them that there's an approach to life, and the only approach is to be your authentic self, because you're not going to fool anybody. And even in teaching public speaking, I teach kids how to speak persuasively. And I say, listen, if you don't really believe it, you're dead in the water before you even started, because you just have to be your authentic self. Yeah, if you're in something for the money, or you're doing just something because you have to do it, it's okay. Some people need to do that for survive. But when you take on a creative project, I think you really have to let your heart lead, do it with passion. And I think the right things, like you said, will just show up. You won't even expect, what will come.
I've seen it in my career so far. Mind you, like I said, I've been graduated high school for 11 years. So in my career for 7, because I did 4 years university, and anything that I tried to force or anything that was just not in alignment, the money was not there. As soon as I switched to real estate, the money showed up very quickly. And that's a career with 100% commission. Mm-hmm. So obviously there's alignment there. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And I think we spend a lot of time forcing things, even in relationships, right?
Gotta make Don't get me started. Right? That's a whole other episode.
Right. But we do that, right? We do that. We even, and I'm sure in real estate, you're constantly telling probably buyers, like, this wasn't the house for you if it didn't work out. But people want to latch on to this idea, and it's really hard to let go. If you can learn that that's kind of going to give you peace in your life and navigating it, I think people will find what's meant for them a lot faster. I'm sure in the housing, I can't imagine how many people you have to just like talk through it, because that's a big life decision that people get really emotional about.
So many people around me are so shocked by how I'm not very stressed ever. Mm-hmm. They're like, you're pretty peaceful and at peace for like a real estate agent in one of the biggest market in Canada. Yeah. And I just say, like, if a deal is not happening, it's not meant to be. Like, it's like, what are you going to do about it? And the deals that were the best places for my clients, they happen so seamlessly. So if I get any bit of sense that this deal is going to be difficult, I don't even put energy into it. Yeah. And it all seems to work itself out.
Yeah. And that's that's something I think we learn as we go. We learn as we grow, right?
Yeah.
But it's not always easy when you visualize. And this part in my book where we have this vision of what is supposed to be, and we get romanticized by this idea and this dream. And then it gets harder and harder to let go of. And we're all guilty of it. But how much of it is reality, and how much of it is just this fantasy that we had that may or may not unfold the way we picture? So it's tough.
I agree. At what point, like, walk me through the decision to finally say, you know what, I'm writing this book. It's happening. How long ago was that?
So, in 2019, I had this. Yeah, I had just had my third son, and I was slated to go back to work that September, and I got my schedule. And I had this 9th period, which is the last period of the day, public speaking class, all seniors, I think there was 25 or 26 kids in there. And I remember just crying, thinking, oh my gosh, if I ever have to get home early or leave a minute early, I never can do it. And seniors, I remember thinking, God, what a nightmare, And again, little by little, the school year started, and that class became a magical group of kids who just took me in, who were, I could still picture them clear as day, who sat where in that room. And they just were really kind to each other. They were from all walks of life in the room. This was on the football team. This kid wrote for the school paper. This kid was an introvert. You know what I mean? Like, just a totally different mix of kids, not in many of the same cliques. And for some reason, they just came together. And I felt really comfortable with them. So I started to take different risks with them. And I taught these kids how to do motivational speaking, which I had never done before, but with kids. But at the time, I was listening to Ed Milet, who I just adore. I was listening to some Rachel Hollis, Gabby Bernstein, Brene Brown, some of these players in this personal growth space, Jenna Kutcher. And I felt like, this is like a really interesting way to public speak. I wonder if I could teach kids to do this. So I kind of did some reading and research on how to go through that. And I taught those kids how to do some persuasive speaking, but motivational speaking, tell stories. And what came out of that room was so inspiring that I started to think about motivating myself and chasing dreams and going out there and getting after the life that you really want. And I vowed to that group of kids that I was going to publish this book and that I had this idea my whole life and I'm going to go after this dream. And I created an Instagram account called Pyrch Gets Published, which you see today on Instagram. And I just started to journey and journal through this writing process. And at first, I started to go back to that old manuscript and try to make it work. And then I tried to do some picture book writing. And then one night that same year, I was lying in bed with my middle son, and I started to type on my phone the first chapter of the book. And I wrote, I wish someone did this for me in high school. And I just started drafting the stories that I had repeatedly told students over and over and over again about my life, about what I saw in them, about navigating through this crazy, difficult time of graduation through college and beyond. I just ran with it. And I never wrote so fast in my life. I told my students about it. They were, so excited. They helped me title the book. My students now, once I got the book deal, my students helped me pick the cover, helped me with the cover. The publishers gave me some ideas and they're like, ask your students, which my students thought was so cool. So they are laced in every single word of this text. And I think everything kind of came together, even though, like we talked about previously, I was trying really hard to push against what was in front of me at first. Got to go with it because, here I am with this book and a lot of what I wrote in the book, like I said, I couldn't have done I don't even think I could have done it, 5 years ago. I think that it was the right time with the right group of kids. And every time I struggled with a spot in the book that was vulnerable or that I didn't know if I wanted to reveal, I just felt like I have to do this for them. And it pushed me to the finish line.
I hear a lot of themes of accountability in that story. Mm-hmm. You say it out loud to your high school students, and then it becomes real because that age group, they're going to hold you accountable. They're going to ask you about it every week.
And I won't let them down. I think it's really important to connect your dream to things in your life that you will not let down. I will not let down my students. I will not be that teacher that says something and then doesn't follow through. And I never wanted to be the teacher who preaches a lot, but doesn't show kids. Because let's face it, we tell kids a lot of things and they're like, okay. But when you live the life or you walk the walk, all of a sudden, they start to trust and believe in you. And I also attached this dream to my own 3 boys. And I felt like I can tell them to go reach for the stars their whole lives. That if I'm sitting at home miserable and never going for it, and they're not seeing me do it, the message is lost. I mean, even this morning, I'm like, all right, guys, mommy's got to do our podcast. They're like, okay. And they all knew, go downstairs, find something to do. Like they're seeing me live my dream, which is really impactful.
I think a lot of parents forget that your kids are sponges. They are watching every move you make and they're going to emulate you in a lot of ways. So if you want your kids to be hardworking and determined and ambitious, if you're not emulating those characteristics, where are they going to learn it from?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's easy to talk. It's easy to say the right things. Mm-hmm. And, it is a challenge some days to do it and just show them and to be motivated, but it's so important. We're all products of our own parents. So, we know it's true, right? We know that it's the truth. It's just a question of stepping up to the plate.
We talked before about traditional publishing versus self-publishing. It's very easy to self-publish a book. And that's why we see a lot of authors getting published very quickly. And someone that you didn't even know who was a writer, all of a sudden their Instagram bio says published author, whatever, But I know you were adamant on going through the way of traditional publishing. Why?
So I have to say, I think it was the English teacher in me that needed that validation that what I was putting out in the world was worthy of the credit. Is that everybody's path? Absolutely not. Is that the right path for every book and every story? I don't think so. It was just something that I felt really passionately about. But you're right. I mean, there is wonderful opportunity for people to self-publish and to put their messages out in the world in a faster, easier way, so yeah, I think there's a path for everybody, but that was definitely something that I valued, as I think it's the English. I have to blame being an English teacher and wanting that validation and that stamp of the publisher saying, yes, this is good. This is worthy of an audience.
But talk to me about the hurdles that you went through going that route, because it's not easy. So talk about all of the rejection that you went through.
There's a lot of rejection. I think anytime you do something creative, I mean, even you with the podcast, right? You're putting yourself out there without armor. Here I am. Here's my creative process. Here are my words. And, it's either going to land or it's not. And in the publishing world, yeah, you have to almost go into it knowing that you are going to be rejected, and you can't be shocked or defeated by that, because that is just part of the process. The same way when you put out a podcast, the first times that you do it, you're going to look at, well, how come no one downloaded it? My mom listened, right? There's just this feeling like, oh gosh, this is not what I intended, right? This is hard. I think you have to be ready for that. And there were times when I definitely questioned, why am I doing it this way? Should I self-publish? Because so many people have opinions, right? I mean, everybody has an opinion about the route you should go. Like when you say I have, and everybody has a friend. I have a friend that just self-published. I have a friend that used this. And I, look at my friend's book. Everybody gives you unsolicited advice. It's like when you're getting married or you're pregnant, everybody wants to tell you the stories, right? I just really had to stay true to what I wanted. And I would thank them. And I would say, that's great. That's a great story. I'll consider that. And I think it was all helpful because it continued to remind me and continued to confirm that this was the path I truly wanted. And it was okay. I just kept reassuring myself that it's okay. This is it's your choice. And I could change the path if I ever wanted to, but I was just really clear on, I knew the rejection was going to come. I accepted it, and I just kept forging forward. And there was self-doubt, of course. I think that's just part of life.
But I mean, it took you 3 full years to finally get published.
Yeah.
Where do you have the resilience and determination to be able to keep accepting those rejection letters? Yeah. How many?
Gosh, countless. I have emails and letters and countless. I think that for me, it was first writing this piece that I felt like was the best that I could put out. And then it was editing. And I went to conferences. So I did some literary agent pitches. So I think that, just continuing on different paths and taking different avenues to get to this point kept me fresh, because I kept learning. Every time I did something, I learned. I did a query letter workshop. That was really helpful. I met a wonderful literary agent on Twitter who was running like a contest where he would read your query letter and give you feedback. And I did that. So even though it was rejection, I do feel like through the process, I still wasn't just stagnant. I was continuing to grow and learn. And then I started to write the nonfiction book proposal, which was a whole nother 35-page document, which I didn't even know writing this book was a thing. So then there was that I learned about. So, I think that when you are going for your goal and you're getting rejected, or when people are just saying flat out no with no further advice, I do think it is an opportunity to grow and learn and figure out other ways you can approach the goal. So I think that's how I stayed with it, is because it didn't feel the same every single day. And then I would get little blips of encouragement from a colleague that I shared a chapter with, or my students. I would read a couple paragraphs and ask them for feedback. And that kept it exciting and fresh for me.
Because if you're getting the sense that someone out there is saying this is good, there has to be more people out there that's going to like it.
Yeah, I think that you just have to start finding your people, quite frankly, and I think that in every facet of our lives and every step of our lives, we need to surround ourselves with people that cheer us on, but you can step back and fill your world with people that cheer you on.
It's not always easy to find those people, though. Sometimes we're surrounded by people who are jealous, who are envious. And it's usually the people that are closest to us that don't cheer us on, because it triggers an insecurity in them that if we are so close to each other and we grew up in the same way, we have the same job, and you're accomplishing that goal, that means I can, but I'm not. So I'm triggered. And those are usually 100%. The people that never support you, are the closest people to you.
100%. It's very sad, but I think, again, getting yourself to a point where you can see that and that you accept that is really important. It doesn't mean you have to X them out of your life. And it also, I think, doesn't mean that they're terrible people. It just sometimes means that this is what they're capable of offering you, and that's okay. But it's time to also fill your life with other people and to branch out so that you've got some people that are in your corner cheering you on. And I've found too that in this process, what's been interesting is sometimes the people that give me the excitement are people that I've met online, or people that, like this, where I connect with through a podcast. And I'm like, wow, that person really gave me an extra kind of shot of confidence. So you don't know where it's going to come from, but you have to be open to it.
You had to find your people 100%. The ones who are going to love what you're creating, but also the ones that have went down the path that you're about to go down and who get it. You know what I mean? A further thought to that, I have what I would call some of my closest friends who I don't think has ever listened to my podcast. And I'm about to get to episode 100. I've been doing it for 2 years and has really never asked me about anything real estate wise. And
Wow.
I've taken notice. Let's just say that. And they're still my friends, but I've noticed myself getting closer to people who take interest in basically the two biggest parts of my life. It's no different if I had a new kid. And sure, like I understand, like I have friends that have kids, and it's like, because I don't have kids, I don't really understand. I'm not like in that part of my life, but right. I'm still going to like every photo that you post. I'm still going to like say, how are they? And I'm sure like new parents as well, like take notice, like you have never once like asked me about my kid. Like that is literally my life right now. Yeah. And it changes friendships and changes some of the people that are closest to you.
Yeah. And listen, it's hurtful too. It feels hurtful because you think that we expect in this life, right, that we give and that we receive and that we put our energy into people and we hope that they also will reciprocate that. And that's not always the case, right? So we acknowledge it. And then I think, like you said, you kind of pull away and you move towards the people that are cheering you on and lifting you up, and that it's mutual. And that's hard sometimes. I'm not saying that's easy. And I've experienced that too. I've experienced friends that have never asked me about my book, have just, hasn't even been on their radar. And I just really try to say to myself, I'm sure it's not malicious, right? But it's just what they're able to give or that's my connection with them. I had one friend who I said, I'm going to do a book launch party on this day. And the response was, I'll have to see, what's going on that day. I'm like, okay, which that's not easy, but you have to just meet people where they are.
Completely agree. What was the hardest part of writing the book?
Oh, that's a great question. The hardest part, I will tell you, there was the most difficult chapter for me to write was the lesson objective, get your heart broken. And I think the hard part for me was blocking out the judgment that I might get in that chapter and really get it. I keep telling people I had to write it raw. I cried while I wrote that chapter. I deleted a lot writing that chapter. At first, it was really about just a relationship that I had in my late 20s that I thought was it. And then really was totally devastated when the relationship didn't work out. And I really went through a dark time, and which led me into a depressive state. And I didn't really want to write that at first. I felt like, oh, I can't tell everybody this. And then I think in the wake of the pandemic and seeing so many of my students struggle, I just kind of committed to, you know what, this is what they need. They need to know that the adults in their lives, the people in their lives, this is not a unique experience, that many people have had this experience and that they will be okay. So that was really difficult for me to put out there. And I still sometimes like panic when I think, oh gosh, this book's going to drop September 6th. And how is it going to be received? But I just got myself to a point where I thought, you know what? I'm proud of what I did. I wrote it for these kids, and the other noise around it is really not important. It's about that one kid that reads it and thinks, wow, okay, this sounds familiar to me. And then the chapter kind of evolved into heartbreak about many kids experiencing divorce at young ages and seeing the love that they thought was going to be forever of the parents not being what they thought it was going to be. So it was a hard chapter to write because of the emotion that I really kind of gutted myself to do it. I'm proud of what I put out there, but I can't say it's not without some, apprehension about how it's going to be received, but we can't control that. We just can't control how it's going to land. So we'll see.
So even though that was the hardest part, do you think that's probably your favorite part of the book?
I do. I think that it's one of the chapters that, and because I really included so much of what I learned from my students about love and about loss, I think it is one of my favorite and probably one of the strongest chapters because I flexed my writing muscle really further than I think I ever have, because I just, like I said, you have to block out the noise. And I think anytime you're doing something creative, I can't stress this enough, you got to put out the best product you can, and not everyone's going to love it, but that's creativity,
I think I felt love the hardest at that age, like the most real and raw. I don't know if I've cried over a boy harder than when I did at that age of like 17, 18, 19. Like I have vivid memories. And when I think back, it's probably some of the strongest love I felt for people because I hadn't been like screwed over by the world yet.
You know what it is? You're so vulnerable and so desperate for acceptance because you're sort of who you are, that we attach our confidence to a person that wants to be with us or that tells us, I love you. We attach as an extension to ourselves, and we look for that to build us up. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
It's interesting. I think I disagree with you there.
Tell me.
I felt more the attachment and linking my self-worth to relationships probably towards later university and into like that couple of years after university. But I found the love that I was feeling at like 17, 18, 19, I think I just felt not that this is it, but I felt I could see like the romance movie ahead of me. Like I didn't see any other way it wouldn't be because I didn't know any other way. Like I didn't know what real life was like yet.
Well, we all search for the happily ever after.
Yeah.
I think that impacts our story every time there's love on the horizon, right? I think we do. We how could you not? I think people fall. It's such an amazing emotion and it's so exciting that how could you not? I think that's the beauty of it, is that all of a sudden it's like, that's why they do rainbows and butterflies, right? Starry-eyed. Yeah.
And I think with like your first couple of loves, you don't have a guard up because you don't know what to have your guard up about.
Well, and you don't know the fear of a heartbreak. You think, well, why would he break my heart? This is it. What do you mean you don't want to be with me? Right. So you're right. And then as you start to learn what heartbreak feels like and the devastation of it, then you're scared. I mean,
you're trying to mitigate it a bit.
That's right. And you try to avoid it at all costs. And that's why people build up walls after, because they're scared. Again, we all get our heart broken at some point. And I think, and this is part of my book, is that I think that when your heart is broken, you really then prepare for the right love, and you see the difference, and you see the way that it can be. And it takes time. It takes time, and it takes really self-love as well.
Mm-hmm. To start concluding it for this episode, the book launches September 6th. So as of this recording, about 2 weeks from now. Are you nervous?
Extremely nervous, excited, and overwhelmed. The book has been on pre-order for months now, and I think it's doing well. The publishers seem happy. So I think it's just a question of, over the next couple of weeks, getting myself to a point where I have peace in the celebration of it being out in the world. I think that's kind of what I'm most excited about, is this anticipation of readers. And hopefully my intention is really to help people, to help teenagers, and to help them feel not so alone. Because man, I wish I had a book like this when I was younger. That's really why I wrote it. It's really why I wrote it, because I think, we don't want to feel alone in our emotions and in our journeys. So yes, to answer your question, I am nervous, I am overwhelmed, but I'm very excited. It's a lifelong dream.
When you think back to the past 3 years, your dream is about to become a reality in 2 weeks. What have you learned about yourself that has surprised you?
I think it's how connected I am to, I've been a teacher for 20 years, and it's been my career. But I think through this process, I really understand how much a part of me these kids really have been, and how they have changed my life. And as a teacher, I hope kids know this, that as much as I'm teaching them to do the thing and do the reading and the writing, I hope that they know how much they've shaped and changed my life. And I think in this process, I've learned just how, God, they've shaped me, and how much I value them. The book is dedicated to my students. It wasn't even a question. I think that's what I've learned about myself, is who would I be without these kids? I'd be a totally different person, which is kind of funny, because I don't think that teachers go into teaching to, you'll always hear teachers say, I want to impact my students and I want to change the world. And for me, I'm like, God, I'm so grateful for them for changing me and teaching me. So something unexpected. I think that's kind of what I've learned.
And last but not least, you've accomplished a goal, and almost like you said, have now a second career halfway through your life. So many people think if they don't figure out their entire lives by 25, 26, there's no other opportunity. But you said it yourself. I'm on my second career. My life did not end after I have 3 children. So what is your advice to anyone kind of not going after what they really want?
I think it's a choice. I think a lot of times people, want to talk about, I've had it hard, and we like to play the victim role. It's a choice. It is a choice. It is a choice to go after it. And if you're not getting what you want out of this life, change what you're doing. Read, listen to podcasts, go out there and meet different people, and start to be open to what you really want in your life. And if you have something that you've always wanted to do, but fear has stood in your way, then that's a choice. You're allowing that to happen. And it's not easy. It's not easy, but I felt anyway that I thought, if I got to the end of my life and I looked back, what is the one thing that I would regret if I never tried? And for me, it was putting a book on the shelves of the bookstores. And whatever your dream is, if you know it's there, you got to go after it, because the alternative is looking back and living with and letting go of that regret. And to me, that was scarier than any failure that I could possibly face.
Yeah, seriously. You're having me rack my brain of what are all the things I want to get done? And if I don't start doing them now, when?
When that's, it's easy to say, I'll do it when, I'll do it when, I'll do it when. And that's how I think dreams they slip away. So yeah, there's so much that life has to offer if you're willing to jump in.
Melissa, I'm not surprised you taught a motivational speaking class because this felt you're inspired by people like Ed Milet and Gabby Bernstein. I don't think you realize that you sound very similar to them because I listen to those people all the time. And this podcast does not, for me, feel much different than that.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, that is, of course,
that is an amazing compliment because that's really, again, if someone would have told me that this was my sweet spot, I would have said, really? And it just feels right. It feels great. And there's nothing more than I enjoy than cheering people on and then hearing back from my students, I did it, or I tried, or, hey, I appreciate, you believing in me. And I think that's what all of us just really want in this life, is someone to say, you got this. And I hope I can be that for my readers and, of course, for my students and anyone I come in contact with.
Absolutely. Melissa, for anyone who wants to connect with you further, plug where they can find you and also promote your book and where they can find it.
Yep. So you can find me daily on Instagram at Pyrch Gets Published. And that's where you'll see all the crazy things going on, even in my classroom. My book, here it is, actually. This is the advanced reader copy. It is on sale right now. Beyond the Bell, 12 Lessons for Navigating Your Life After High School. You can find it easily on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, and where all books are sold. Don't forget to support your small independent bookstores. I'm also on Twitter at Pyrch Melissa. You could also check out my website, melissapyrch.com. So I'm everywhere, and I hope to connect with your listeners. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And if you are a high school teacher listening to this right now, I can only speak for myself, but if I was in grade 12 ready to graduate, this would be a gift I would absolutely love from a teacher, from a parent, from like an aunt, uncle. This is a perfect gift to give any student about to graduate. So Melissa, thank you so much for coming on. I'm excited for the feedback on this episode. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Did you know that I'm not only a podcast host, but in my full-time career, I am a Toronto-based real estate agent. In 2021, I closed 100 deals. Yes, you heard that correctly, 100. So if you or someone you know is a busy professional looking to get into the Toronto real estate market and looking to work with a realtor who values your time, make sure to reach out to me and let's get connected. And in the meantime, we'll see you here back next week.